The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. Meister Eckhart. There is a truth hidden inside these words that most people spend their entire lives overlooking. They search for change in the world before allowing change to happen within themselves. They wait for circumstances to improve before they permit themselves to feel hope. They believe that reality is the author, and they are merely the readers. But what if everything you have accepted about the relationship between your inner world and your outer experience has been reversed? What if the field of life surrounding you has never been leading you at all? What if it has been waiting patiently and silently for you to decide who you are before it reflects that decision back to you? This is not about pretending. It is not about denying facts or escaping challenges. It is about understanding that every visible result was once an invisible state held consistently long enough to become undeniable. The field follows your focus, not because it is magical in the way stories describe magic, but because consciousness has always been the first movement behind every meaningful transformation. Think about how often your attention has been stolen by appearances. A delayed opportunity convinces you that success is disappearing. A difficult conversation persuades you that love is fading. A temporary setback whispers that your future has already been decided. Without realizing it, you begin to bow before evidence that has not yet finished unfolding. You grant authority to circumstances that are still changing. Yet every season in nature reminds us that what appears empty is often preparing for abundance beneath the surface. The seed never argues with the darkness of the soil. It does not question whether the sun still exists simply because it cannot see it. It remains faithful to the life already placed within it. Your own consciousness was designed with that same quiet certainty. But somewhere along the way you learn to trust your eyes more than your inner knowing. The greatest struggle is rarely against the world itself. It is against the temptation to abandon the state you have chosen before reality has enough time to organize itself around it. Every dream begins with enthusiasm. Every vision feels powerful in its first moments. But then comes the silence. Nothing appears different. The same environment surrounds you. The same people behave in familiar ways. The same doubts attempt to return as though they never left. This is the moment where most people surrender. They mistake delay for denial. They assume that because the picture has not yet changed, the process has failed. In doing so, they unknowingly plant themselves back into the old identity they were trying to leave behind. Your inner state is not measured by how inspired you feel during easy moments. It is revealed by what you continue believing when nothing outside confirms it. Anyone can feel confident after receiving good news. Anyone can believe after the miracle has already arrived. But the individual who quietly holds peace before peace becomes visible is operating from an entirely different level of consciousness. That person is no longer reacting to life. They are participating in its creation. Imagine standing beside a calm lake at sunrise. If you throw a stone into the water, the ripples continue moving outward long after your hand has become still. Consciousness works in much the same way. Every deeply accepted assumption sends invisible waves into the field of existence. You may not immediately witness where they travel. You may not know which conversations are beginning because of your decision today. You may never see the countless unseen connections rearranging themselves on your behalf. Yet movement has already begun. Reality is slower than thought, but it is remarkably faithful to sustained direction. This is why your focus matters so profoundly. Attention is not merely observation, it is nourishment. Whatever you consistently feed with emotional conviction grows stronger inside your experience. If fear becomes your daily companion, it slowly teaches your nervous system that danger is your natural home. If gratitude becomes your practice before evidence appears, your entire perception begins recognizing possibilities that once remained invisible. The world has not suddenly changed. You have changed the lens through which you meet it, and that altered perception invites different outcomes into your life. Many people ask why they continue attracting familiar disappointments despite wanting something entirely different. The answer is often uncomfortable because desire alone cannot overcome identity. You may sincerely wish for abundance while secretly identifying with lack. You may long for healthy relationships, while still carrying the quiet expectation of rejection. You may pray for confidence while repeatedly introducing yourself to life as someone who is uncertain. The field does not primarily respond to occasional wishes. It responds to the state you repeatedly occupy until it becomes your home. This realization is not meant to create pressure. Quite the opposite. It offers freedom. It means your future is not chained to your past unless you continue carrying the past into every present moment. Every sunrise arrives without demanding yesterday's mistakes. Every breath offers an opportunity to inhabit a different version of yourself. Transformation does not begin when circumstances become favorable. It begins the instant you stop asking circumstances for permission to become who you were always capable of being. There will be moments when your senses argue against everything your spirit knows. Bills may still arrive. Doors may still seem closed. Old habits may attempt one final return. During those moments, remember that appearances are often the last part of reality to receive the message your consciousness has already accepted. The architect finishes the design before the builders begin construction. Likewise, your inner acceptance precedes your visible results. If you abandon the design because the building has not yet appeared, you interrupt the very process you initiated. Patience, then, is not passive waiting. It is active faith expressed through consistency. It is choosing the same elevated identity today that you chose yesterday, even when external confirmation remains absent. It is refusing to negotiate with fear every time circumstances attempt to provoke it. There is tremendous power in quiet persistence. Mountains are shaped by forces that never rush. Rivers carve valleys through steady movement rather than explosive effort. Lasting transformation follows the same principle. What you consistently embody eventually becomes impossible for reality to ignore. The remarkable thing is that this practice begins changing you long before it changes your environment. You discover a peace that does not depend on outcomes. You notice confidence appearing without applause. Gratitude begins rising before achievements arrive. These are not small developments. They are evidence that your foundation is shifting from external conditions to internal certainty. Once that foundation becomes stable, the outer world has no choice but to reflect the new pattern you have established within yourself. But there is another dimension to this journey that few people ever recognize, and it is precisely there that the deepest transformation begins. Not in learning how to create a new future, but in understanding why the old identity keeps trying to reclaim your attention, even after you have chosen a completely different state. There is a quiet battle taking place within every human being, and it is not the battle between success and failure, wealth and poverty, or happiness and sorrow. It is the battle between the person you have repeatedly been and the person you are now choosing to become. The old identity does not disappear simply because you have made a decision. It survives through familiarity. It whispers with the voice of habit. It presents old emotions as though they are permanent truths. It invites you to revisit stories that no longer deserve your attention. If you are not aware of this process, you may believe you are moving forward while your inner conversations continue walking in circles. This is why holding the state requires more than a single moment of inspiration. It requires a gentle but unwavering commitment to stop introducing yourself to life through yesterday's limitations. Every identity carries its own emotional atmosphere. A person who deeply believes they are capable walks into a room differently from someone who secretly expects rejection. The difference is rarely in appearance. It exists in presence. One enters life expecting possibility. The other unconsciously searches for confirmation of doubt. Neither person realizes how many decisions are being influenced before a single word is spoken. The field surrounding them is responding not merely to their actions, but to the silent assumptions beneath those actions. When you understand this, you stop asking, "What should I do?" before asking, "Who am I being while I do it?" That question changes everything because behavior can be imitated, but identity cannot be faked for long. Consider the musician preparing for a great performance. Long before stepping onto the stage, they have rehearsed the music until every movement becomes natural. During the performance, they are not desperately trying to remember each note. They have become the music. In the same way, your desired future cannot remain something you occasionally visit in moments of meditation or imagination. It must become the atmosphere in which your thoughts naturally live. You are not practicing for one extraordinary day. You are training yourself to occupy a state so consistently that it begins expressing itself without effort. This is where many people become discouraged because they confuse emotional intensity with transformation. They chase dramatic experiences, believing that powerful feelings alone will change their lives. Yet the greatest changes often occur quietly. A tree does not announce each new ring forming within its trunk. The sunrise does not shout as darkness gives way to light. Real transformation is frequently subtle until one day you look back and realize you no longer react as you once did. Situations that used to drain you now leave you peaceful. Conversations that once awakened fear now awaken clarity. The miracle is not that your world changed overnight. The miracle is that you became someone who no longer required the old world to define you. The mind, however, has an interesting habit. It wants evidence before commitment. It says, "Show me the result, and then I will believe." But life seems to answer with the opposite invitation: believe deeply enough, and then the result will appear. This can feel uncomfortable because it asks you to release your dependence on immediate proof. Yet think about every meaningful achievement in human history. Every invention, every masterpiece, every great act of courage existed first as an invisible conviction. Before anyone else believed, someone quietly held an inner vision despite countless reasons to abandon it. Their strength was not that they never questioned themselves. Their strength was that they returned to their chosen vision every time doubt attempted to become their identity. Your attention is one of the most valuable gifts you possess, because whatever consistently receives it begins shaping your inner world. Notice how easily the mind can spend hours replaying a single disappointment while overlooking countless reasons for gratitude. This is not because the disappointment is greater. It is because attention magnifies what it repeatedly touches. Imagine holding a magnifying glass beneath the sun. The light has always been present, but concentrated focus creates extraordinary power. Your consciousness functions in a similar way. Scattered attention produces scattered results. Directed attention gradually transforms possibility into experience. There will be days when the old emotions return with surprising strength. Do not mistake their appearance for failure. Storm clouds passing overhead do not become the sky itself. They simply move through it. Likewise, an anxious thought does not define your identity unless you choose to build a home around it. Learn to observe your emotions without surrendering your direction. Let them speak without allowing them to make decisions. Every time you remain faithful to your chosen state despite temporary feelings, you weaken the influence of the old identity and strengthen the reality of the new one. One of the most overlooked forms of spiritual discipline is the conversations you have when no one else is listening. Your private words become the blueprint of your public life. If your inner dialogue constantly predicts disappointment, criticism, or defeat, your nervous system begins preparing for those experiences as though they are inevitable. But when you deliberately speak to yourself with wisdom, patience, and certainty, something remarkable begins to happen. You become a safe place for your own consciousness. Instead of living in conflict with yourself, you begin cooperating with the future you desire. This does not mean ignoring challenges. It means refusing to let challenges define the deepest truth about who you are. A sailor cannot control the wind, yet by adjusting the sails, the destination remains possible. Life will continue presenting unexpected circumstances, changing seasons, and unfamiliar roads. The question is never whether obstacles will appear. The question is whether you will continue steering from the identity of fear or from the identity of quiet confidence. One choice keeps you reacting. The other allows you to remain centered, while the field gradually reorganizes around your unwavering focus. As this understanding deepens, you begin noticing something extraordinary. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin revealing themselves. People respond differently to your presence. Ideas emerge with surprising clarity. Coincidences become more frequent. It is tempting to call these events luck, but perhaps they are evidence that your perception has aligned with possibilities that always existed. Reality has countless doors, yet only certain states of consciousness recognize where they are. Eventually, you realize that holding the state is not an exhausting effort. It becomes a way of living. You no longer wake each morning wondering whether you deserve your vision. You begin each day from the quiet assumption that what is planted within you carries its own promise of fulfillment. The field continues responding, not to occasional moments of certainty, but to the identity you consistently embody. And just when this truth begins to feel natural, another realization emerges. One that reveals why time itself is never your enemy, and why the waiting you once feared may actually be preparing you for a level of transformation far greater than you imagined. Time has often been misunderstood. Many people see it as an obstacle standing between themselves and the life they long for. They count the days that have passed without visible progress. They measure the distance between where they are and where they hope to be. And with every passing moment, they begin to wonder whether they have believed in vain. Yet time has never been your opponent. It has always been the faithful servant of growth. The oak tree does not apologize because it did not become magnificent in a single season. The river does not lose confidence because it has not reached the ocean by nightfall. Everything in creation unfolds according to an order that cannot be hurried without weakening the result. Why should your own transformation be any different? The greatest danger during this period is not that nothing is happening. The greatest danger is convincing yourself that nothing is happening simply because your eyes cannot yet perceive it. There are countless movements taking place beneath the surface of every meaningful change. New skills are quietly developing within you. Old emotional patterns are losing their strength. Opportunities are forming through conversations you have never heard. People you have never met are moving toward intersections with your life. Circumstances are shifting in ways too subtle for the logical mind to measure. Reality is never as still as it appears. What looks like silence is often preparation. Imagine watching a sculptor shape a massive block of marble. At first, every strike of the chisel seems insignificant. The stone still resembles nothing more than a rough piece of rock. An impatient observer might leave, believing no masterpiece will ever emerge. Yet the sculptor understands something the observer does not. Every careful strike removes what no longer belongs. The final work is not created in one dramatic moment. It is revealed through thousands of seemingly ordinary decisions. Your consciousness is being shaped with that same patient precision. Every time you refuse to return to fear, every time you choose gratitude instead of resentment, every time you remain faithful to your vision despite appearances, another unnecessary piece of the old identity falls away. There is profound wisdom in learning to become emotionally independent from immediate outcomes. This does not mean becoming detached from your dreams. It means refusing to let temporary circumstances determine your inner condition. Too many people postpone joy until they receive the promotion, meet the right person, heal the relationship, or achieve the financial goal. They unknowingly place their peace in the hands of future events. But peace that depends upon conditions is fragile, because conditions are always changing. The deeper invitation is to discover a peace that becomes the very foundation from which new conditions are created. This is why your daily practice matters far more than occasional moments of inspiration. It is found in the quiet decisions no one applauds. It is choosing thoughts that strengthen rather than weaken you. It is protecting your attention from voices that constantly predict limitation. It is remembering your chosen identity before checking the opinions of the world. These simple acts may appear insignificant, but they accumulate with astonishing power. A single drop of water seems harmless, yet over time it can shape solid stone. Your repeated focus carries that same quiet influence over your life. There will inevitably be moments when old memories attempt to convince you that history must repeat itself. The mind often uses familiar pain as evidence that nothing has changed. It says, "Remember what happened before. Why should this time be different?" But memory is not prophecy. Yesterday may explain why certain beliefs were formed. but it does not possess the authority to dictate tomorrow. Every new moment arrives untouched by previous failures until you choose to fill it with old expectations. You are not required to carry every experience into the future. You have the freedom to leave behind identities that no longer serve your highest purpose. Notice how children approach possibility. Before the world teaches them endless reasons to doubt, they imagine without embarrassment. They dream without calculating probabilities. They create entire worlds from simple ideas because they have not yet learned to imprison themselves inside limitation. As adults, wisdom is not abandoning imagination in favor of fear. True wisdom is allowing imagination to mature into disciplined faith. It is no longer fantasy. It becomes a conscious partnership between vision and consistent inner alignment. One of the most beautiful transformations occurs when you stop chasing signs and begin becoming the sign yourself. Instead of constantly asking whether the universe is sending proof, you become living evidence of your own inner shift. Your calmness in difficult situations becomes the sign. Your kindness when bitterness would have been easier becomes the sign. Your confidence without external validation becomes the sign. Long before your circumstances fully transform, your character begins revealing that a deeper change has already taken place. People may not understand what is different about you, but they will feel it. Presence communicates what words often cannot. The field is always responding to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, imagination, and actions begin moving in the same direction, an extraordinary harmony develops within you. Internal conflict begins dissolving. You no longer spend one moment visualizing abundance and the next rehearsing scarcity. You no longer pray for peace while mentally feeding anxiety throughout the day. Instead, your entire being gradually learns to move with a unified intention. This coherence creates tremendous momentum because your energy is no longer divided against itself. As this way of living becomes more natural, you also discover compassion for others. You realize that everyone is responding to the states they have unconsciously accepted. Judgment begins giving way to understanding. You stop competing because you recognize that another person's success cannot diminish your own. You stop comparing timelines because every life unfolds according to its own rhythm. Confidence replaces envy. Gratitude replaces impatience. Love replaces the exhausting need to prove your worth. These are not merely pleasant emotions. They are powerful states that align you with a life of greater freedom. Perhaps the most remarkable realization of all is that the reality you have been seeking has also been seeking a version of you capable of sustaining it. The blessings you desire require a consciousness prepared to receive them without fear, self-sabotage, or doubt. This period of holding the state is not wasted time. It is sacred preparation. It is the quiet season in which your inner world becomes strong enough to carry the weight of the future that is already moving toward you. And when you finally understand why this preparation is so essential, you are ready for the final step, the moment where holding the state is no longer something you practice, but something you become, allowing reality itself to surrender to the unwavering certainty you now carry within. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Those words remind us that the greatest revelations never begin with complete visibility. They begin with an inner certainty that refuses to be negotiated by appearances. By now, you have seen that the field follows your focus, that identity shapes experience, and that time is often preparing what your senses cannot yet perceive. But there is one final truth that gathers all the others together. Holding the state is not about forcing reality to obey you. It is about becoming so deeply aligned with your highest self that reality can no longer reflect anything less. There comes a moment in every genuine transformation when striving quietly falls away. Up until this point, you may have believed that maintaining your inner state required constant effort. You watched every thought with tension. You worried that one doubtful moment would undo all your progress. You feared that if you became discouraged for a single day, everything would collapse. But life has never been that fragile. Growth is not destroyed by temporary emotions. It is strengthened by your willingness to return, again and again, to the truth you have chosen. The mountain does not become smaller because clouds cover its peak. it remains exactly what it is, whether anyone sees it or not. Your chosen state possesses the same stability when you stop measuring it by fleeting feelings. The deepest confidence is surprisingly quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not argue with those who doubt it. It does not desperately seek approval from the world. It simply exists. Think about the sun. It never competes with darkness. It simply rises, and darkness disappears because light has entered the space. In the same way, your responsibility is not to fight every fearful thought that appears. Your responsibility is to become so established in your chosen awareness that fear gradually loses its authority. You do not conquer darkness by studying it endlessly. You introduce light. This changes the way you move through ordinary days. You no longer wait for extraordinary moments to feel grateful. You no longer postpone peace until every problem has been solved. Instead, each morning becomes an opportunity to remember who you have decided to be. Before speaking to the world, you speak to your own heart. Before reacting to circumstances, you return to your center. You carry yourself as someone whose future is already unfolding in perfect order. This is not arrogance. It is quiet agreement with the deepest truth within you. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The very things that once triggered anxiety begin losing their power. Delays no longer convince you that you have failed. Criticism no longer defines your worth. Unexpected obstacles no longer persuade you to abandon your vision. You begin responding rather than reacting. That shift may seem small from the outside, but it is one of the greatest victories a human being can experience. For the first time, your inner world is no longer being governed by external conditions. Instead, your inner world becomes the source from which your experience flows. When reality finally begins reflecting the state you have faithfully held, many people call it luck. Others call it coincidence. Some describe it as perfect timing. But you will recognize something much deeper. You will remember the quiet mornings when nothing appeared to be changing. You will remember the evenings when you chose hope instead of surrender. You will remember the countless invisible victories no one applauded. You will understand that the harvest did not begin on the day the fruit appeared. It began the moment you planted a different identity within yourself and refused to dig it up every time doubt whispered your name. And even then, do not make the mistake of believing the journey is finished. Every fulfilled vision invites a greater one. Every new horizon reveals another beyond it. Life is not asking you to arrive at a final destination where growth no longer exists. It is inviting you into a lifelong relationship with consciousness itself. Each new season will offer opportunities to deepen your faith, refine your character, expand your compassion, and strengthen your awareness. The outer achievements will come and go, but the person you become through this process will remain. There is also a beautiful freedom in releasing the need to control every detail. Once you understand that your responsibility is to hold the state while life arranges the path, you stop exhausting yourself trying to force every outcome. You become available to unexpected opportunities. You welcome doors you never planned to walk through. You discover that some of life's greatest blessings arrive in forms your imagination could never have predicted. Holding the state does not narrow your future, it opens it. Never underestimate the influence of one individual who has mastered their inner world. Peace spreads, confidence inspires, love awakens love. Your transformation is never yours alone. The way you speak, the way you forgive, the way you remain calm in moments that once overwhelmed you. All of these quietly touch the lives of people around you. Someone watching you may find the courage to believe again. Someone discouraged may see your steadiness and remember their own strength. The field you influence extends far beyond what your eyes can measure. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether your faithful focus matters, remember this. Every thought you consistently nourish is laying another stone on the path ahead. Every loving assumption is preparing a future where love feels natural. Every peaceful response is creating an environment where peace can flourish. Every act of gratitude is expanding your capacity to recognize abundance already moving toward you. Nothing offered from a sincere heart is ever wasted. Stand then with quiet certainty. Let your imagination become a